Tonight, alarm bells ring for the UK economy as borrowing costs hit a 27-year high. The pound sees a big fall as markets worry about UK debt and the Chancellor's ability to stick to her fiscal rules. Also tonight, I'll speak to Zach Polanski, the new Green Party leader, about why he spoke to Jeremy Corbyn yesterday and why he thinks that flying the flag can be intimidating to some people. Plus, a special report on how red tape is leaving hundreds of new homes laying empty, despite the government's pledge for a house-building boom. Plus, as King Jong-un makes a rare foray abroad to meet with his Russian and Chinese counterparts in Beijing, we'll look back at the stranger public moments of the North Korean leader. All that and more with Nick Ferrari and Kirsty Blackman, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Tuesday, I'm Sophy Ridge live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. Well, it was only yesterday that the Prime Minister revamped his Downing Street operation to make the economy the centre of the government's priorities. Today, though, there was more bad news for the Chancellor ahead of the autumn budget. The long-term cost of government borrowing has now reached its highest level since 1998, prompting the pound to sink. Our economics and data editor Ed Conway has this analysis.
Looking at markets at the moment, some extraordinary things really happening, starting with gilt yields. What are gilt yields? They're basically the interest rate that the government has to pay on its debt. And I say the government basically means all of us. This is showing you that interest rate on 30-year debt, so kind of the closest thing that there is to a mortgage. And that interest rate for the UK has gone up, and it's now at the highest level that it's been, going all the way back to 1998. But it's worth just asking the question, is the UK an outlier? Are we the only one facing gilt yields as high as this? Well, in one sense, certainly yes, because if you compare other countries around the world, and in particular G7 nations, so other industrialised nations, this is showing the maximum, the minimum. The UK used to be more or less middle of the pack up until here, the mini budget, back in 2022. And look at the red line, OK, so that's spiked. But particularly look at it in relation to the rest of the other G7 nations. We just remained higher. And since the election, actually the UK's cost of borrowing has been higher than most other G7 nations. So definitely an outlier in that respect. And there's other bad news as well. You know, if you're the Chancellor, you don't like to see that last chart. You don't like to see this either, because this is the pound versus the US dollar. And just look at what has just happened to the pound. It's sunk. It's one of the biggest one-day falls that we've had in a long time for the pound. So those two things together, it's the kind of thing that people at the Treasury start to get worried about, raising the question, what's going on here? Well, one thing is what's going on with the public finances. I'll come to that in a second. But gilt yields are also affected, and to some extent the pound, by what's going on with inflation. And here, the UK is also a bit of an outlier. This is showing you the inflation rate for the UK, so CPI, the rate at which prices are changing each year. And you can see it's risen up relatively high in the last few months. And if you compare it not just to the Bank of England's 2% target, but to other countries, again, same thing that we did earlier, other countries in the G7, have a look. The UK is comfortably now got the highest inflation in the G7. So it's not just about the public finances, it's also about inflation. But when it comes to the public finances, obviously the Chancellor looking at this ahead of the budget that's coming up later on this autumn, there's an enormous question mark, OK? So right now, this is a projection for long-term revenues, so tax revenues for the government over the next few decades. OK, they're relatively flat there. Look at what happens to spending, just based on higher spending on health, higher spending on social security, higher spending on pensions. That's where it is at the moment. And if that red line is higher than the blue line, that means you're basically having to borrow more. Look at what happens in the coming years. So that is projected to go to over 200% of GDP, basically what the highest it's been in peacetime that we have ever seen before. And this is part of the reason, that gap between the two of them, is part of the reason why Rachel Reeves is going to be focusing on that when it comes to the budget coming up shortly.
Ed Conway there, and of course those soaring borrowing costs are sure to feature in tomorrow's papers as well. We'll have our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines, alongside the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and the PR consultant Alex Dean. I mean, what a sobering assessment of the state of the economy. And this matters because, you know, inflation, this is how much we're spending on our supermarket shop. borrowing costs. This is how much the government is able to spend on things like our schools and our hospitals. I mean, it's bleak, Nick.
Well, I'm still writing it down from Ed's report. Borrowing costs are up 200%, 200% of GDP, the highest in peacetime. That jumped out at me. Figures we go back to 1998. We have the worst inflation rate in the G7. And it wasn't that long ago, Sophie, Kirsty, it wasn't that long ago that we were told that everything was fully costed. I do think this speaks to a government that actually doesn't know where it was. And I know you did, quite rightly, extensive coverage of this shake-up within the Treasury and Darren Jones going into this new position, everyone looking at this budget coming down the road. They have got to make this budget work because can you imagine if they get this wrong, the financial implications for this country are truly frightening. Now, I'm not pretending the other mob, by the way. They cover themselves. They were through. We all accept that. The Conservatives were absolutely gone. But I do think there was a sense of optimism, a sense of hope and a sense of right. And they've blown it. These figures, I mean, I feel the shit. These figures are truly shocking.
You need a bigger piece of paper.
I do need a bigger piece of... I might have to use the reverse.
We've got some you can borrow.
Thank you. Yeah.
At what point, though, is this not just about the day-to-day politics, but about the fundamentals?
But this is
of
when you
our
go to
country
Sainsbury's
as
or
well,
Asda.
though.
This is your pension. This is your mortgage. This. Your viewers now. Don't worry. This isn't a Westminster story.
Yeah.
This is your mortgage and this is your supermarket shop.
But what I mean is, it's about who's the number 10 and what they do about it. But it's also about the things that we've always kind of taken for granted, like we're going to have people who are working age population who can pay enough taxes and stuff like that, or a population that isn't ageing at a certain rate. I mean, it just feels the projections from Ed Conway's report there are really something else.
I thought Ed's graphs were really stark and really kind of brings it home. And the government and the previous government as well have both spent time saying, we are just in line with everybody else. Don't worry, our inflation figures are just the same as everybody else. Don't worry, our borrowing stuff is just the same as everybody else's. But they're not. They're clearly not. And I think actually what Nick was saying there about that level of hope that the Labour Party came in with, they're pleasing nobody right now. And it's worse because there was that level of hope. And so actually, people who are investing in financial markets, people who are looking at the UK as a prospect, are even worse hit because they're concerned because there was a level of hope and the government's not delivering anything. But the government's also not delivering for my constituents. It's not delivering for the people out there who's, even if you bring inflation down to 2% or 1%, even if you bring inflation down, that still means the cost of pasta is increasing by 1%. Just reducing inflation doesn't mean that the cost of your food shop goes down. You need to actually get inflation below zero in order to try and get
it's also,
things back to being affordable.
It's also, as well, I think it's so interesting that the one thing that's almost always true in politics is that if you have high inflation, then that party is not going to win the election. I mean, it's what we saw in the States as well, right?
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is that I think as you interpreted it yesterday, obviously there's enormous pressure on Rachel Reeves. Everyone's looking at that budget, but it doesn't normally serve a Prime Minister well if they let go of a Chancellor. We all know what normally happens there, but the pressure that is on that woman now to deliver in whenever it might be, a few weeks, month or so's time. But I don't see how they can... I mean, Ed is always on the money, literally, Ed Conway, and I don't see how they're going to climb out of it currently. Where is this growth?
I mean, a lot of this problem is caused by Brexit. If you look at the fact that we've got a differential impact on the UK compared to other places, because of Brexit, because of this stamping down on migration, we know that people who come and live in this country from other countries grow the economy. We know that grows your working age population. We know that the vast majority of people who came to the UK, if you look at the figures, if you look at some of George Osborne's old budgets, it says, look, we're going to increase migration, which means that we're going to reduce public sector net debt, because migrants contribute to the economy.
Particularly, historically, EU migrants rather than non.
Absolutely.
Respectfully, Kirsty, it's not as if they're celebrating in Paris or Brussels or Berlin. They've got their own problems in other parts of the Eurozone.
They do, but you saw those graphs.
Be fair.
You saw the fact that we're doing worse than everybody else. Now, what's the reason for that?
But then, if I was Rachel Reeves, I would say we have got a bit of growth here, albeit anemic, but the UK has greater growth than any of the other European nations. So to blame it all, and I know you're not blaming it all on Brexit, and I understand what you're saying, but I do think the world's moved on since then, no?
Well, we're going to be feeling the impacts of Brexit for a significant length of time. You know, we're going to feel the impacts of that. We're the only place that had to ration tomatoes.
Right.
You know, it wasn't the case across the rest of the European nations.
I must have missed out on that because I'm never short of tomatoes.
It was grim. But actually, you know, that Brexit's not over and done with. The actual results of Brexit and the fact that our exporters are facing more red tape, for example, continues.
Kirsty, can I ask, do we need to accept in the UK that we are not paying the level of taxes needed to get the public services that we expect? And I'm not saying this is not an argument for higher tax.
No.
I'm saying, but the level of tax and spending are just not matching up, right? So we either have to cut spending or we have to raise tax.
In Scotland, we've got a differential tax rate. We've got a Scottish rate of income tax. People who are earning the least pay less tax than they would in England. People who are earning the most pay more tax than they would.
Well, that does happen in the UK as well. In the rest of the UK as well.
No, compared to England. So
right.
Scotland compared to England. So I pay more tax on my salary than I would if I was an MP living in England.
Right. Okay.
So you know that is a more progressive tax system that actually brings in more for Scotland from the income tax that we bring in. And actually, you know, it has not created a pull factor away from Scotland. We have not seen people moving away as a result of that, but we're better able to fund our public services.
We are currently toiling under the highest tax burden, I think, in 70 years. The idea we should be taxing people more, I think, is utterly insane. We should be trying to encourage businessmen and businesswomen to start businesses, to get growth and not have this lunacy of the hikes in national insurance. I would do it completely the other way around.
Brilliant.
But what do I know? And I have got tomatoes. So if you need any, just let me know after the show.
Thank you.
Love it. Bringing people together on the Politics Hub. And thanks both very much indeed. Sure. Now, the Green Party has elected a new leader, Zach Polansky, and look, he absolutely stormed the contest. He got 85% of the vote. That's what you call an emphatic win. And this is a guy that we do need to start paying attention to because the Green Party won 4 seats at the last election. That means they got the same number of MPs as Reform. And we spend an awful lot of time talking about the threat of Nigel Farage on the right, myself included, hands up. But Labour also faces a real challenge on the left. Zach Polansky is the embodiment of a new kind of green politics that isn't all about the environment. So he talks about eco-populism, and what I think he means by that is that he wants to grab the microphone on the left. He wants to talk about Gaza, about immigration, about the wealthy, and he's not afraid to be controversial. So will he break through and convince a new cohort of younger left-wing voters? Or does he risk alienating the more centrist, or dare I say, even conservative environmentalists who may have supported the Greens in the past? Either way, he is a man who could really shake things up, and I caught up with him a little time ago. Thank you very much for being on the programme. Congratulations on your landslide victory. So far it feels like you've been pitching to Green Party members. What's your pitch to the public?
My pitch to the public is that everyone knows the Green Party cares about the environment and about nature, and that's always going to stay that way. But actually, lots of people don't know that we want to lower people's bills, we want to nationalise our water companies, and we want to make sure that there's a politics that's representing people. Right now, I'm speaking to you from the basement of United Voices of the World. That's a union for migrant workers. These are people I've just met who are working for the National Health Service, for people who are keeping our country running and keeping us all healthy. They are not being even paid a proper living wage. At the same time, we've got multimillionaires and billionaires who are not paying their fair share in tax. My pitch to the country is the Green Party will work to turn this country around and make much better political choices.
You say there that the Green Party will work to turn this country around, and I noticed earlier today you said you're here to replace Keir Starmer. So I just wondered, what you mean by that. Are you saying that you think you could be Prime Minister?
No, so what I'm saying is that we've got elections in May in places like London, in Birmingham, South Tyneside, in the Senedd, and we know that Labour have traditionally had strongholds there. This isn't my imagination, you can already see from the polling and by-elections that are happening week in, week out. People are leaving the Labour Party because they are disillusioned that they were offered real hope and real change and they didn't get any of it. And they are frequently and increasingly turning to the Green Party. And in the same way that the Reform Party has effectively replaced the Conservative Party by doing what the Conservatives were trying to do, but doing it more boldly, I would disagree with all of their policies. But I don't see why on the left The Green Party shouldn't be doing that with the Labour Party. My bold leadership, and more importantly, the bold leadership of the Green Party, means that we will be unapologetic about the things we stand for and what we stand against. And I think that's a party that people can get behind. And if they can, today's the day to join the Green Party.
It's interesting you're talking there about Reform and the Conservative Party, because it does feel like they're in some ways the only opposition really to the Conservatives on the right, but the left is slightly more splintered. Are you talking to Jeremy Corbyn, to that party? Are you considering doing any deals at all?
I talk to MPs that I agree with all the time, and I'm saying the same thing to Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana, both publicly and privately, that I would like people to join the Green Party. We got 39 second-place finishes and nearly 2 million votes. Our first mission is to turn those into first place. Now, obviously, it's not for me to tell other people what to do.
So when was the last time you spoke to Jeremy Corbyn?
I spoke to him briefly yesterday. He has a Gaza inquiry later on this week. This is something the government tried to stop, where he wanted to put an independent inquiry into the ongoing genocide in Gaza. The government have said no, but actually Jeremy is taking the bold and courageous steps of doing an inquiry anyway and making sure that people give evidence about what's happening in the region and the outrageous atrocities that are going on. This is the exact kind of example where even though if someone is from a different party, but I'm absolutely aligned with what they're doing, then I'll always call out what I think is good for this country and good for our global politics.
I'm keen to get a bit of a sense about who you are as a politician, because, as you say, you have got this platform now. The Green Party have been doing pretty well in polling. You've got some MPs in Parliament as well. You previously said that the age of NATO is over. So do you believe that the UK should leave NATO?
So Green Party policy is to stay in NATO but reform it from within. And one of the key asks is to remove nuclear weapons. Now, that's something I absolutely still support.
I mean, I am going to come in if I may, because NATO is a nuclear alliance. That's the kind of the point of it, right?
I agree, and that's why I was going to go on to say we've got Donald Trump, a man who says Vladimir Putin is his friend but still humiliates Zelensky in the White House, who is largely running and controlling NATO at this point. So what I'm arguing for is not a withdrawal of NATO straight away, but actually to begin conversations and dialogues with our European partners about what does an alternative alliance look like that is based on peace and diplomacy rather than nuclear weapons. Now, if that sounds unrealistic, what I would say is that Nigel Farage was the leading cause of Brexit, one of the biggest disasters, I believe, for this country. And that man still has the audacity on the national stage to suggest that he wants to remove himself from other organisations. I believe ultimately our heart is in the European Union. And I think there's a way of building connections and peace and diplomacy that accepts the special relationship with Donald Trump. But America more widely has lots of questions for lots of people in this country.
So
there are decades where we have got involved with wars and made things worse.
Just to be clear then, in the, I guess, medium to long term, you would like to leave NATO. Is that your personal position?
Only as long as there is an alternative alliance based on peace and diplomacy with European neighbours, yes. That's not something to do right now when we need to defend and stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian people in the same way as the Palestinians. But I think we do need to have a longer conversation, a national conversation in this country about the fact that nuclear weapons aren't making us any safer. We're 80 years since the Hiroshima disaster. And this is the exact time to have the conversations about what does a different way of looking at peace and security look like. There's also issues around cybersecurity and, of course, the climate crisis. We know that wildfires and floods will cause incredibly difficult conversations and situations for civil defence. And I think all of these things need to be taken in around, and we need to have a look at what is an alternative way of doing things. Because I think if anyone claims right now that the world seems like a safe or secure place, at the same time that Donald Trump is talking about turning Gaza into luxury condos, then I'd suggest their view of the world is outdated and probably needs some reflection.
At the beginning of the interview, you talked a bit about migration, and it feels to me like there's a pretty, I guess, impassioned is one word for it, debate around patriotism and about the flag in particular. Keir Starmer said yesterday he's proud to fly the St George's Cross. He's got one in his office, but he thinks it's been politicised. What's your take on the St George's Cross?
Well, I think that migration is at the heart of this country, and migrants contribute a huge amount. That's not a new thing. That has been traditionally throughout our history. And that English flag means different things to different people. And I think if people want to wave it because they're being patriotic, particularly at football tournaments, I think there's a huge space for patriotism in this country. But I'm also aware that for lots of people who have arrived in this country, or people who aren't even migrants, to be frank, black and Asian communities, the flag can mean very different things around colonialism and empire. And that's the thing about flags. It means different things to different people.
What does it mean
what
to
I
you?
want to move on to is rather than talking about
the flag?
what does it mean to me? Well, I think it depends on the context. So during an England football game, I'll paint my face in a St. George's cross quite happily. At another time, though, where we don't have a football tournament, I think it's quite imported from America, this idea that we wave flags outside our country, outside our house. If people want to do that, then I think that's up to people what they want to do. But I think at times of heightened tensions, I would say patriotism is actually about loving your neighbour, whether they're from this country or not. Patriotism is about building up communities and building cohesive communities. I'm really proud today to be an elected Jewish leader of the Green Party. My deputy leader, Mohsen Ali, is a Muslim man. I think that's patriotism, when we recognise that anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are two sides of the same coin, and actually communities are so much better when we're cohesive and work together in solidarity.
It's interesting just listening to what you're saying there. Do you think then that flying St. George's Cross from outside your house at a time, as you put it, of heightened tension, do you think that could be intimidating for some communities?
I think people can experience it as intimidation. And I think if those communities are intimidated, again, the patriotic thing to do would be to have those conversations with your neighbours, have those conversations with the communities. The big problem we have is we have Nigel Farage whipping up hate and division. And then we could have leadership from this Prime Minister about having this conversation. But he's not condemning Farage's comments. In fact, he is implicitly condoning them. And so, yes, I do think we're at a moment of heightened tension. We've got people outside asylum hotels where people have fled for their life, fleeing from persecution and war. And even if they haven't been doing that, even if they're economic migrants looking for a better life, the idea that we've got to a point in a national conversation where we have dehumanised people so badly, I think hurts a lot of people. And actually, we can have a compassionate, kind and inclusive conversation about migration in this country. We can have a conversation about the fact we don't have enough council houses. We don't have an NHS that is funded properly. But these are not the problems of migrants, and they're certainly not the problems of people of colour. These are the problems of successive governments that have absolutely failed to fund our public services and refused to tax multimillionaires and billionaires just a small amount to tackle the inequality in this country. So I'm not surprised that there's tension in this country right now. I see it as my job and the Green Party's job to ultimately recognise that tension, but say the problem is not the small boats, the problem is the private jets, the problem is their private yachts. And I think we need to be clear about that in the storytelling that we tell, because Farage is a master at this, whipping up hate and division. It's time for hope and unity in our politics, and that's what the Green Party are going to bring.
Just finally, because there's an awful lot that we could talk about. You're going to have time, I'm sure, over the coming months and years to set out your policy platform in more detail. But just one thing that I sort of noticed when I was sort of researching your sort of backstory, you changed your name when you were younger, I think I'm right in saying. Do you want to just share the story behind why you did that?
Yes, and it's very linked to the migration conversation we just had. My family, if we go back, were in Latvia, then in Ukraine, then in Poland. Jewish people who were fleeing persecution, and this is a very common story to lots of communities, but particularly the Jewish community. And as I grew up, I'd always been told the story, and it was believed in my family, that we had changed my name to Polanski to avoid anti-Semitism from the Nazis. The really stark thing is it turned out it was actually to avoid anti-Semitism in Britain. My family arrived and were treated badly. I wasn't around, obviously, but the stories are that many people were oppressed from that period. We've seen it with Jewish people, we've seen it with black people, we've seen it with Irish people. There's always a new ethnic minority to scapegoat. And that's why authenticity of solidarity is so important to my politics. And it's why I'd say to anyone who's watching or listening to this interview who needs to know that a party has got their back right now, the Green Party will always have your back.
OK, good to talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Zach Polanski there. Let's bring in Nick and Kirsty, shall we? I mean, he is someone who is prepared to go places that Keir Starmer isn't on the left. I think it is fair to say, just listening to some of the arguments he was making there. You know, saying that some people could experience the St George's flag as intimidation. That's not something that you'd hear the Labour leader say. What did you make of the interview?
I mean, he's massively charismatic, I think, and he's clearly commanded a huge majority of Green Party members. I think that comparing him to Keir Starmer, as an SNP politician, you would almost expect me to say Keir Starmer's not all that on the left, whereas the Green Party are much more on the left and much more aligned with a lot of my thinking there. So I think they're two very different characters. It's interesting to see how, I suppose, the Green Party develops and moves, and it'll be interesting to see the dynamic of the fact that their two MPs in Parliament who stood as leaders did not get the role, and how that's going to work with their leader being outside of Parliament.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. What did you make of what he had to say?
Drearily predictable. It's right that he's the Green Party, because there was the green envy about people with private jets and private yachts. He doesn't realise that those are the businessmen and businesswomen who drive growth, who are currently forming orderly queues at Heathrow Airport and Farnborough to get the hell out of this country because of the tax implications. We've never lost so many millionaires and billionaires at the rate we are currently. We're not funding the NHS enough. Dear God, we give it £3 billion a week. What more can we give? Can we make sure that that £3 billion is being well spent? He wants to build more council houses. OK, great idea, Mr Polanski. Where are you going to get the cash? And let's start to move NATO. NATO is probably the reason that we can have this conversation in relative safety because of what it's achieved. Now, President Trump's aspects of NATO, I get that, but the idea that we need to have, constructive conversations about leaving NATO. Thank goodness the Green Party really actually don't mean a great deal.
Do they not mean a great deal?
No, they don't. No, they don't.
What do you reckon?
I mean, they got an awful lot of votes. And it looks like...
How many MPs have they got?
It looks like...
Same as Reform.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they don't catch the narrative. They don't get the narrative, do they?
Well, I suppose it depends, There's lots of people that are shouting very loud.
I'll come to Aberdeen High Street and I will walk down the High Street with you and I will stop 10 people. Have you heard of Nigel Farage? I would think 10 would say, yeah, they might load. Have you heard of Mr Polanski, the film director? They won't have a clue what you're talking about. That's the reality.
So he's got your vote then, yeah?
I mean...
Well, he won't be surprised to hear that I have.
But in terms of the kind of narrative and in terms of how people are feeling about things, it is the case that people are feeling concerned, massively concerned about the climate. It is the case that people feel like the NHS is not being funded enough to provide
£3 billion a week, Kirsty. How much do you want to give it?
You're talking about that kind of narrative. It's a case that people feel very strongly that there should be more council houses. That's one of the biggest things that comes into my inbox, despite the fact that Scotland is building way more council houses than England is. That's one of the biggest things that people are concerned about.
This country's so broke. What is it? I've got it around. The borrowing costs are 200% of GDP. It's the highest in peacetime. We can't go and buy council houses until we get some money in.
You can actually. If you do what we've done in Scotland, which is cancel the right to buy, you can buy council houses. You can build council houses with an absolute guaranteed return. It's one of the safest investments because you're going to get a return forever until the house falls down, which is a long time in the future.
Can I ask you, Kirsty, because we were talking about reform there, and really they are the only challengers on the right, realistically, for the Conservative Party. On the left, it's much more splintered, right? We've got the Corbyn Party, we've got the Green Party, we've got, Lib Dems, SNP. Do you think it's time for the left, I guess, to mobilise and start doing deals? I was interested to hear you spoke to Corbyn yesterday. It was
interesting to hear that. So the Green Party of England and Wales obviously doesn't stand in Scotland. Mm-hmm. There's a separate Scottish Green Party. I think, do you know what, I'm happy to talk to anyone in terms of working with them on a case-by-case basis in Parliament. And we do that. We do, believe it or not, work across the House in terms of trying to make a difference. You saw that for the benefits changes that were being put through the Universal Credit Bill. A number of us on the left in Parliament were working together to ensure that the government couldn't have its way and make the cuts to disability benefits that they wanted to make. Wholesale signing up together, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. But working on a case-by-case basis, absolutely in the interests of the people of Scotland and the rest of these isles.
Great to hear both of your thoughts on that. You're watching The Politics Hub. Coming up. A Sky News investigation reveals how the government's own safety regulator has been getting in the way of thousands of people moving into their homes.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor. I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich. but now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hello, welcome back. Now, Keir Starmer has made house building one of his government's central priorities and key to his growth agenda, the all-important growth agenda. But a Sky News investigation has revealed that hundreds of completed homes have been left empty because of the government's own building safety regulator. So properties are still waiting on approval, with red tape also preventing the construction of new developments. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has this report.
Newly built flats in a country that desperately needs them. Keys ready for people to move into their own home.
This is 99 apartments.
Estate agent Jamie has already sold dozens of them.
So this is our show home. We have 1 and 2 bedroom apartments for sale here. And the type of buyers that move in are first-time buyers, young families.
But there's a twist. Contracts exchanged, hopes raised, but the buyers still can't move in. This block was completed over a year ago, but the building safety regulator hasn't signed it off.
The carpets are down. The couple who bought this, they worked really hard to save for their deposit. 14 months they've been waiting to move in because the building safety regulator never tell us when they're going to sign the paperwork off.
After the Grenfell Tower fire claimed 72 lives, a new building safety regulator, the BSR, was set up to ensure high-rise developers don't cut corners and risk safety. But 2 years on, and it's causing its own problems.
So what I've seen, there's nothing apparent that is going to cause a building any real issues. As an example, signage has been 2 millimetres too small to sign off. And so the developer has to change all the signage, which is fine, but at 2 millimetres to cause a 14-month delay, it just doesn't make sense.
This block is not the only one affected by the regulator's delays. Sky News has discovered there are still 1,210 completed homes waiting for the BSR to sign them off. And it's not only finished buildings that are at the mercy of the new safety regulator. Following the Grenfell fire, nobody wants to be seen on the side of high-rise property developers. But if we're going to meet the 1.5 million new homes target, they're going to have to be built. And what's clear is this government is overseeing a system of regulating that building that's just not fit for purpose. So what are you going to build here?
So we've got planning for 352 apartments, and 166 of those homes will be for social rented housing.
This site in South London should be in full swing by now, but it and tens of thousands of other homes are still hanging on months delayed approval.
We currently have 3 applications. The current dates that we're looking at that they've given us, one is 6 months, one is 9 months, and one is 12 months. We have tens of millions of pounds tied up in the 3 sites.
This government is desperate to build houses. This doesn't sound like it's helping.
No, definitely not, Sam.
New buildings should be signed off within 12 weeks, but Sky News can reveal that the percentage of applications determined inside this period is falling from 47% at the end of September to 32% by the end of March, and the backlog is growing faster than the BSR can tackle its cases. In a statement to Sky News, the BSR said setting up the new safety body has been complex and huge progress has been made. They are now working closely with industry to deliver safer, higher quality buildings. But the BSR also point the finger at developers, blaming the quality of their applications, a claim vigorously contested by the industry. Ultimately, the BSR is a branch of government, and housing bosses think it's ministers who should carry the can, while the regulator itself has been given a hospital pass. Without a fix, Keir Starmer's housing target looks harder by the day. Sam Coates, Sky News, Greenwich.
Well, the man brought in to try and accelerate those reforms to the building safety regulator has been talking to a parliamentary select committee today, saying they want to show change rapidly.
If we haven't shown very significant change by the end of the calendar year, we run the risk of losing the complete confidence of everyone in the regulatory regime. I personally wouldn't put my name to that because I'm here because of my own experiences at Grenfell and why I see there to be a necessary focus on safety without compromise to the numbers of homes. But, just to be clear to this panel, I think it's absolutely achievable and I welcome the chance to talk about, what we're actually doing because it's not words, things are happening, and what we need to deliver on in terms of promise.
Andy Rowe speaking there. Let's chat to Nick and Kirsty again, shall we? We began the programme talking about the economic situation, growth, and then you see this backlog. I mean, Nick, it's not great, is it?
No, it's terrible. And that gentleman, Mr. Rowe, isn't here to defend himself, but he says things are happening. Well, clearly they're not, because a 14-month delay is unacceptable. A couple of points to make there. I'm surprised that a solicitor allows a sale to go through if the people who are birching it, if we refer to Sam's report, there was a couple who haven't been able to get in. I think they had children who haven't been able to get into 14 months. Why did they ever allow that purchase to go through if you can't actually gain occupancy of the apartment? I find that a little bit surprising. But it is arguably one of the most ambitious, as I think Sam said, is 1.5 million homes over their 5-year period, 300,000 a year. Now, they're down on year one, but they have said that is understandable because there are processes being put in place that will mean that next year, the year we've just started, will be better. Well, not if we're held back with problems like that. You can't have this massive drive to try and build properties and then effectively an organisation that you've set up, quite understandably, in the aftermath of Grenfell, and just to tell your listeners, demolition actually starts tomorrow of part of Grenfell. It will actually start tomorrow of part of the tower. You can't be holding back like that. This is left-hand, right-hand, doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously everyone wants to see safe housing. Like, clearly, as you say, it's so important. But some of this just feels like it's just kind of... Inertia, that's a word. I was going to say dilly-dallying, that's a better word. Inertia. It's just like, come on, what's going on? What people do?
I've quite like dilly-dallying as well. Why not? In Scotland, we have had an actual focus on empty homes and on bringing them back into use. So, building new homes is really important. Yeah. And we've been focusing on that as well, but also bringing back empty homes. If there's a home that's empty for no good reason, if we can do our best to ensure that it's back into use. So 2,000 homes were brought back in the last year in Scotland because of a government-backed scheme, the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership. So I would encourage the UK government to actually look at that in order to bring back some of those homes into actual use so people can live in them. Because if they're not able to make good progress on this one, there's other places that they could potentially make progress.
Yeah, and also I guess it kind of sidesteps what's known as the kind of NIMBY issue as well. If people don't want new developments, if there's properties that are already there.
Well, I don't know where you live, I don't know where you live, but sadly there are a lot of shops that are closing where I live, and the high street, as we all know. I mean, is it ridiculous that you look possibly at occupancy in some, not all of them, but some of these shops, should they now actually be converted, and even the flat above, or what?
Exactly. I would love to see more mixed use, and actually it brings
mixed use,
life back
that's
into
it.
a neighbourhood.
Yeah.
You know, when you get people living above the shops, then it feels much more lived, and people are more likely to use the shops. Because they live there, but also because it feels like a much nicer area to be in.
It's also better for the environment. Instead of a boarded up shop, you've got 2 or 3 families living in a couple of floors each.
Totally agree.
We've got a pub nearby.
I know, you're there all the time.
It's shut, so not that one. And I'm never going to be the person to say that, you know, you should... I love pubs to stay, right? But if you say, like, if you could be mixed use, if you can...
Of course.
Housing around it and still have the occupancy, it's...
But that is a relatively easy thing to kit out, I would have thought. You've got the walls there. Obviously, you need fire doors and I get that, but... You've actually got the building there to work on.
That's it. We've solved the housing crisis.
Can I get one of those hats? Yeah, get me one of those hats that Sam had. I want to go around.
Exactly. We'll get
and the fluorescent jacket.
Exactly. Love it. Once we feel this go round. Thanks, guys. You're watching the Politics Hub coming up. As pupils head back for the new term, a teaching union warns that the burden on teachers and school leaders has never been higher. Hello, welcome back. Now, a teaching union has warned the burden on schools and colleges has never been higher because of poor public services. It's a report by the Association of School and College Leaders revealing that teachers are being expected to run food banks, health checks and support families with housing because of a lack of funding. Our education reporter, Anjum Pierbakis, has more.
As the new term begins, across the UK, schools are stepping into roles far beyond teaching, be it through food banks, supporting families facing housing instability. Some are even mediating conflicts online and resolving parking issues. But school leaders are saying this should not be their role.
The core business of a school is to be a place of academic study, to teach the children the curriculum so that they get the very best outcomes and that they can enter the world of work or adulthood well prepared.
In the report, the Association of School and College Leaders clarify which services schools might reasonably offer, provided they receive adequate funding and resources. But some say there's still a definite need.
Am I ever going to ignore a hungry child or a dirty child or somebody who's going, no, of course I'm not. And so if not us, then who, I think is the question we have to ask ourselves. That doesn't necessarily mean we're the best people to do things, because I don't think we are in lots of cases, but we're what's available.
Food banks, washing facilities and laundrettes. These are just some of the areas that schools are having to provide their local communities and children that they serve. In addition to this, where social media has played a role in causing disputes out of school hours, schools and school leaders are having to deal with the aftermath. And school leaders are now asking for clarification from the Department for Education because they need to know where their roles and responsibilities lie.
As schools are increasingly forced to shoulder social responsibilities, the calls for clearer boundaries and stronger support grows. Anjum Pierbakis, Sky News.
Well, we'll chat this in a moment, but the Department for Education has told us in response to that they're working to tackle inequality by expanding free school meals and breakfast clubs and reducing uniform costs for parents. It's a really interesting debate, this, I think, because obviously for schools are where the state comes into contact with children, right? So it's their opportunity to do all kinds of things to try and support them, whether that's having healthy meals or family support or whatever. But also teachers are there to teach, right?
Yeah.
That should be their primary job. Is there how do we kind of marry these two things?
I mean, it's a difficult one, right? Surely, you know, we need to ensure that children are having all of their needs met. We need to ensure that they're fed. We need to ensure that they're warm. We need to ensure that they're clothed. I'm not convinced schools are the right place to be taking that on.
Mum and dad,
you know, but it is absolutely their family. However,
it's called parents.
In the event that the family is not getting a living wage, in the event that the family doesn't have enough to live on, energy costs are spiralling, you know, the cost of food is going up and people can't afford to even make basic ends meet, then actually there should be support services in place to ensure that kids are ready to learn when they go to school.
Because honestly, if you've got a teacher with a class of 30 children,
absolutely.
I mean,
Your colleague's report was extraordinary. We have teachers sorting out parking issues. Well, what's going to happen? Traffic wardens give it physics homework. This is absurd. How have we come to this? Listen, it is challenging enough to be a teacher, and we have a fantastic army of men and women who are going back this week. I appreciate in
Absolutely.
Sorry, they've been back a couple of weeks. I know they've been back, and good luck to everyone up north of the border. We should not be saddling them with trying to sort out parking issues or indeed these other matters. I mean, that is absurd. That is either what the traffic wardens are there for or these food banks. They have a tough enough job as it is, these two. I would not... You'll be delighted to hear I would never be a teacher, and there are people celebrating.
I really don't know. We're going to go straight to the White House and listen in to Donald Trump.
As you know, this has been going on for a long period of time, and I am thrilled to report that the U.S. Space Command headquarters will move to the beautiful locale of a place called Huntsville, Alabama, forever to be known from this point forward as Rocket City. Okay, so Huntsville, Alabama, we love Alabama. I only won it by about 47 points. I don't think that influenced my decision, though, right? That didn't, right? But we had a lot of competition for this, and Alabama's getting it, Huntsville in particular, so congratulations, everybody. Katie, congratulations. This will result in more than 30,000 Alabama jobs and probably much more than that, and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, and that's billions because it can't be millions, it's billions and billions of dollars most importantly, this decision will help America defend and dominate the high frontier, as they call it. I want to thank Secretary Pete Hegseth. He's doing a fantastic job. And Secretary of the Air Force Troy Mink. Troy, thank you very much. Great job you're doing, Troy. This is such a big deal. This is one that everybody wanted to know. What are you doing? I also want to thank Senators Katie Britt, and I want to give my condolences. Your grandmother, her grandmother just passed away. She was 100, right?
100, and she loved you, Mr. President.
Well, and she was very proud of you.
Thank you very much.
Very, very proud of you. So thank you, Katie.
Wonderful woman.
She must have been. To produce you indirectly, I can tell you she had to be. Tommy Tuberville, who's a great coach. And I won't say anything about what happened with Alabama football this weekend.
Let's leave that out.
But you're not used to that, right? You're not used to that. But Tommy, Auburn won, is right. They did. So you're happy. Tommy's been a great senator, as you know, and a fantastic guy all around. He was also a tremendous coach. House Armed Services Committee Chair Mike Rogers. Thank you, Mike. Where's Mike? Mike, thank you very much. You're doing great, Mike. Representatives Barry Moore, all great friends, Robert Adderholt, Gary Palmer, and Dale Strong. Thank you all very much, fellas. Appreciate it. In my first term, I created a thing called Space Force, so important. You know, we were losing the race in space very badly to China and to Russia, and now we're far and away #1 in space, and reestablished Space Com with a mission to protect American space assets and detect any threat to our homeland. We initially selected Huntsville for the SpaceCom headquarters, yet those plans were wrongfully obstructed by the Biden administration. And as you know, they moved them to a different locale. And today we're moving forward with what we want to do and the place that we want to have this. And this will be there for hopefully hundreds of years. That's where it's going to be. I will say I want to thank Colorado. The problem I have with Colorado, one of the big problems, they do mail-in voting. They went to all mail-in voting. So they have automatically crooked elections. And we can't have that. When a state is for mail-in voting, that means they want dishonest elections, because that's what that means. So that played a big factor also. In Huntsville, SpaceCom will play a key role in building the Golden Dome, as you know. That's going to be a big thing. Everybody wants to be a participant in it. Missile Defense Shield, we're going to be having a Golden Dome that the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. The finest, the best. And by the way, Canada called. They want to be a part of it, and that'll be great. But Canada wants very much to be included in that, and we're going to work something out with them, I hope. It will also ensure that our technological capabilities, of which we're way ahead of anybody else, there's nobody close, remain unmatched long into the future. So I'd like to ask Secretary Hegseth to say a few words. He was very much a part of it. And really, everybody behind me was. Every one of these people would call me and lobby me. I said, Katie, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I know what you want. She said, that's right, sir. That's what I want. And they got their way. So I just want to congratulate. These are really special people. They're politicians in many ways, but they're great patriots, I think even more so than politicians. So they fought very hard to get it, and it's an honor to give it to Huntsville. Pete, say a few words, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. As usual, right place, right time, for the right reason. In your first administration, you established the Space Force at a time when we knew we had to be looking to that domain of space. You also reestablished SpaceCom to ensure that priority was put in place, and you, through the Air Force, independently identified that Huntsville, Alabama was the right place to put it. For other reasons, in the next administration under Biden, they decided to move it somewhere else. Well, during that time, the DOD Inspector General, the Government Affairs Office, they did their own assessments, and where did they say SpaceCom should go? Huntsville, Alabama. So what you're doing today, Mr. President, is restoring it to precisely where it should be based on what the Space Force, the Air Force, your leadership believes will give us strategic advantage in the future. That is Huntsville, Alabama. We are way ahead in space, but this will ensure we stay leaps and bounds ahead, because that's the most important domain. Whoever controls the skies will control the future of warfare. And Mr. President, today you're ensuring that happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Katie, would you like to say something?
Mr. President, we are grateful for your leadership on this and restoring Space Command to its rightful home in Huntsville, Alabama. This delegation has worked together, both chambers, both parties, to make sure that Huntsville was the place that Space Command called home. As was mentioned, obviously the Biden administration chose to make this political. What we want to do is put the safety and security of Americans first. We want to make sure that our warfighter is put first, and we want to make sure that America continues to lead. And today, Mr. President, you've allowed that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tommy, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. This is a great day for our country, not just for our state of Alabama. We need help in our military. We need to catch up. And as Secretary Hudson said, we're not behind in space, but we know where we're at, and we need to expound on that. Now, this move will save the taxpayers $480 million. It's not going to cost more. It's going to cut $480 million. We have the plans intact. It'll be behind a secure wall in Huntsville, Alabama, at Redstone Arsenal. We have 40,000 people there. We have the FBI there. We have missile defense there. We have NASA, Blue Origin, and SpaceX. It is the perfect place for Space Command. I would tell you today, and I've spoke with the President for the last 3 or 4 years about this. If I thought it needed to go somewhere else because I understand the security of our country, I'd be for that. But the best place for Space Command is Huntsville, Alabama, because what we have and what it means to this country is going to be so important. So thank you, Mr. President, for this, and we look forward to building a huge Space Command and having the Donald J. Trump Space Command Center in Huntsville, Alabama.
Sure. Well, Mr. President, thank you. I'll be very brief here. I lobbied the president hard to put it in Ohio, but he said these people behind us, these Alabamas, are just too powerful and too persuasive, and so it's in Alabama. But as Tommy said, this is exactly the right place for Space Force and Space Command. I think Americans ought to appreciate the fact that you can't win the battle of the future unless you control the skies. The cyber security, the communications, the entire infrastructure of the battle in the 21st century will be in space. So it was a visionary move in the first administration for the president to set up Space Force, and I think an equally visionary move to make sure that Space Force is right where it should be in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, anybody want to say anything? Would you like to say?
Mr. President, another promise made, another promise kept. You think about it, Redstone Arsenal is critical to national security. The president said when you were the 45th president, let's do what's right for national security. And today, that's exactly what we're doing. It's not because of this or that, it's because it's right for national security. You think of the 21 categories that were evaluated to determine what was best for national security. All indicators pointed back to Huntsville, Alabama, and Redstone Arsenal. We have the right people at the right place at the right time. Mr. President, on behalf of the people of the 5th Congressional District and all of Alabama, thank you for keeping your word. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Anybody?
Let me just say, Mr. President, I want to say thank you. And thank you for doing this because it was the right thing to do. When they looked at all the numbers, Huntsville was the place to go, and like you say, it was unfortunately pulled out, but you made it right. So I want to just say thank you again for a grateful nation, and to the state of Alabama, we're very grateful. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Throughout history, militaries has always understood that whoever could hold the high ground held the advantage. Space is the ultimate high ground. And what we're doing with moving the Space Command to Huntsville is absolutely critical to our maintaining dominance in that sphere. And it goes hand in hand with what we're trying to do with the Golden Dome and missile defense to defend against anyone else who tries to enter that sphere. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. And obviously, national defense is a huge issue. And when you look at the scores, Alabama was #1. And for political reasons, it was moved out of our state. But Mr. President, thank you for making priorities the defense and the warfighter and the safety of this nation. And in the big, beautiful bill, that Golden Dome will be built in Huntsville, Alabama, and we're grateful for that. Thank you.
Listen, as chairman of the Armed Services Committee, I care very much about what's most important for our national security. And the president held a nationwide competition to determine where we should have this command. If y'all remember, at the end of that competition, where Alabama came in first, there was a lot of complaints from the other states who did not place well. He said, we'll do it over with new criteria to accommodate your concerns. Alabama came in first in that second competition. His Secretary of the Air Force reviewed the results, said it was fair, and the president named Huntsville. It was the Biden administration that decided to make it political, even though his own Secretary of the Air Force said it was a fair competition and it should be in Huntsville. So I want you to know I appreciate this president standing up and being strong and saying he's going to make this right and put it where it rightfully belongs, and that's Huntsville, Alabama.
Thank you very much. Good job. So thank you all very much. You are going to leave me alone now? You're not going to call me anymore and talk about this subject, right? You promise? They'll start something else. But I just want to congratulate you. It's a very big deal. When you come out and when you leave the room, you'll see that we just, over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. And you'll be seeing that and you'll be reading about that. It just happened moments ago. And our great general, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's been so incredible, including what took place in Iran, knocking out potential nuclear power for a long time to come. I think within a month they would have had it if we didn't do what we did. But he gave us a little bit of a briefing, and you'll see. And there's more where that came from. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So we took it out, and you'll get to see that after this meeting is over. Do you have any questions, please? Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Tuberville talked about the cost savings
Yeah.
associated with this announcement. Can you talk about the strategic benefits by having Space Force Command headquartered in Huntsville?
Well, it just works because we have so much else there. And having a central, you could call it a central command, but it really is a command station. Also, even locationally, where it is, and when you think about flying distances, if you can save a half an hour as fast as some of these planes go and things go, and even the rockets go, if you can save by having the best location. So we went out, as you know, to experts, and we had 4 different groups of experts. They all said this was the best location. I also loved it from the standpoint, I know the people of Alabama, they are great people, work hard, and there's no games, and they're very proud of it. And I would say they fought harder for it than anybody else also. A lot of states, 5 states really wanted it, but they wanted it more. And I kid you not when I say that these people, they spoke to me a lot. That's all they wanted to talk about. They didn't want to talk about the weather. They only wanted to talk about moving to this location, moving to Alabama, Huntsville in particular. So we're honored to do it. They really wanted it badly, and they got it. Peter?
President Trump, something completely different, but about a big viral social media trend over the weekend. How did you find out over the weekend that you were dead? You see that?
No.
People didn't see it for a couple days. 1.3 million user engagements as of Saturday morning about your demise.
Really? I didn't see that. You know, I have heard, it's sort of crazy, but last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful. They went very well, like this is going very well. And then I didn't do any for 2 days, and they said, there must be something wrong with him. Biden wouldn't do them for months. You wouldn't see him. And nobody ever said there was ever anything wrong with him, and we know he wasn't in the greatest of shape. No, I heard that. I get reports. Now, you knew I did an interview that lasted for about an hour and a half with somebody, and everybody saw that was on one of your competitors. I did numerous shows and also did a number of truths, long truths, I think pretty poignant truths. No, I was very active over the weekend. They also knew I went out to visit some people at the club that I own, pretty nearby on the Potomac River. And no, I've been very active actually over the weekend. I didn't hear that one. That's pretty serious stuff.
I'm glad it's
well, it's fake news. You know, it's just it's so fake. That's why the media has so little credibility. I knew they were saying, like, is he okay? How's he feeling? What's wrong? I said, left. And it's also sort of a longer weekend, you know, it's Labor Day weekend. So I would say a lot of people know. I was very active this Labor Day. I had heard that, but I didn't hear it to that extent. Go ahead, Peter.
Something else. We know that this country has a huge problem with school shootings. You've said that you're open to sending the National Guard pretty much anywhere. Would you ever consider sending an armed National Guardsman to every school?
Well, we have a big problem with school shooting, but we also have thousands and thousands of schools that run perfectly. You know, they talk about you can do things construction-wise, and that's really, I think nobody knows more about construction than me. You can build the construction doors. You can build what they call safety doors, where they lock on the outside, the inside, and every place else. Well, but if one of these lunatics happens to get through, then the police can't get in. Then they're looking for keys all over the place, and it takes a lot of disadvantages to doing, spending billions and billions of dollars and actually making it safer in some way for some of these lunatics that we're dealing with. But I don't think so. I've thrown out the concept. We have great teachers that love our children. The parents love the children. Teachers love the children too. And if you took a small percentage of those teachers that were in the military, that were distinguished in the military, that were in the National Guard, et cetera, and you let them carry, that's something that a lot of people like. I sort of liked it. It'd have to be studied, but they're trained. They know about weapons. You can't do it with every teacher because most teachers don't know, and but I always thought that would be an alternative. But it just, we've had a lot of instances. Other countries have also. They have different kinds of problems than we have, but we do have, there's something going on, and it's a bad thing. Yes, please.
Have you spoken with President Putin in the past week? Have you spoken with President Putin in the past week?
Yeah, I don't want to, I have learned things that will be very interesting. I think in the next few days you'll find out.
Will there be any consequences if there isn't some type of announcement of a meeting with President Putin and President Zelensky?
Yeah,
and what could those consequences be?
We're going to see what happens. We're going to see what they do and what happens. I'm watching it very closely. Last week they lost 7,000, between the two countries, 7,313 soldiers, to be somewhat exact, for no reason whatsoever. And they're Russian and they're Ukrainian, but, they're soldiers. I want to see it end. Yeah.
Mr. President, have you decided you're definitely going to send National Guard troops to Chicago?
I didn't say when, but the answer is, look, Chicago's very interesting because I watched Pritzker get up and say about, we don't need help, we're safe. But 2 weeks ago, they had 6 people murdered, and they had 24 people hit by bullets. Last week, as you know, it was 7 people, 24 people hit, and 7 people died. And then over the last 2 days, that was the crown jewel. They had, I guess, 9 or 10 killed, and 50 hit with bullets. And you have this governor get up, who's a terrible governor. Probably he and Gavin Newsom would be probably the 2 worst and most naive. They're naive. Either they're naive or they're very untruthful. And he'll say, we don't want any protection. We don't need. So in the last 3 weeks, he's lost almost 20 people killed. There's no place in the world, including you can go to Afghanistan, you can go to places that you would think of. They don't even come close to this. Chicago is a hellhole right now. Baltimore is a hellhole right now. Parts of Los Angeles are terrible. If we didn't put out the fires, and I mean the other fires, the bullet fires, they didn't do a good job with, they should have had the water coming down, like I said. We had to release the water. We had to go in and release the water to LA. It's so badly run. But if I didn't send the National Guard into Los Angeles, I would be making an announcement today. I'd be talking about Huntsville, and I'd simultaneously be saying, by the way, the Olympics is not coming to Los Angeles. If we didn't do that, and even the sheriff, the top law enforcement person in Los Angeles said, we could not have handled it without them. So that's what he said.
Make your mind up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks, and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe. Everyone likes you anyway. They probably wouldn't do it. But it's so dangerous. And there are people in this audience that you've suffered greatly. There are people in this audience that have been mugged and hurt badly, and they don't want to talk about it. Maybe you were very brave in talking about it. You made quite an impression on a lot of people. I appreciate it. But there were other people in this room that have been hurt very badly just walking down the street in D.C. Washington, D.C. is a safe zone right now. It's a safe city. The restaurants are open. They're booming. You can't get a restaurant. New restaurants are announcing that they're going to be open. This took place in 12 days. Now it's 15 days, but 3 days ago it became what's known as a safe zone. It's a safe city. And this city was really bad, really, really bad. We took 1,600 people out, hardcore criminals that will not be coming back anytime soon. And we're very proud of it. You know, to have our nation's capital lose every week, you know, it was like years, many years where every single week somebody was killed for many, many, many consecutive weeks. This went on for years. And then we had, last week it was announced that nobody was killed last week. And I made that announcement in front of a very distinguished leader of a country. And I'm saying proudly, ladies and gentlemen, nobody was killed in Washington, D.C. this week. He looked at me like, what's that all about? I say, yeah, we have a little bit of a crime problem. And we don't have a crime problem in Washington anymore. And the mayor has been very helpful, and the police commission has been very helpful, and it's been a great team. And I would love to have Governor Pritzker call me. I'd gain respect for him and say, we do have a problem, and we'd love you to send in the troops, because you know what? The people, they have to be protected. I saw today on one of your networks, not a friendly network, except really the opposite, I would say, very unfriendly network. And they interviewed about 12 people on this morning. Most of them were African American, they were black. And they were saying, please, please, please let the president send in. These were people from Chicago. Please, we need help. We need help. We can't walk outside, we're petrified. If the governor of Illinois would call me up, I would love to do it. Now, we're going to do it anyway. We have the right to do it because I have an obligation to protect this country. And that includes Baltimore. I saw where Governor Moore was asking me to take a walk down the street of Baltimore. Well, Baltimore is a very unsafe place. It's rated number 4 in the city, one of the most unsafe places anywhere in the world. But, you know, we took care. This was a beautiful thing that happened in Washington because we showed that it could be done. And this wasn't just sending big, strong guys, and they are big and they are strong. You know, we had a great decision from the Supreme Court that had to do with sort of talent. It had to do with you are put down based on merit. You can hire based on merit. So merit for a soldier or for a policeman is strong, physically fit, having a certain ability, not a person that is woke and got the job through woke, but wasn't strong enough to lift a gun out of the holster, et cetera, et cetera. No, I looked at the police. As you know, last week I went over, we had a meeting there had to be 300 people, and they were all very impressive looking. And when the bad guys see them, they're not going to do a thing. And so I'm very proud of Washington. It serves as a template, and we're going to do it elsewhere. But Chicago is certainly going to be high. I would love to have him call. I would love the governor of Illinois. I'd be honored to take his call. All he has to do is say, sir, we need help. It's out of control. And everyone knows it is. He's not kidding anyone. I would love to have, I would say, Governor Moore call, because I watched him over the weekend trying to explain that Baltimore, what they need is housing. No, they don't need housing. They need to get rid of the criminals. These are hardcore criminals. You know, we took many people off the streets of Washington, D.C. They're hardcore. They're not going to be good. In 10 years, in 20 years, in 2 years, they're going to be criminals. They were born to be criminals, frankly. They were born to be criminals, and they're tough and mean, and they'll cut your throat, and they won't even think about it the next day. They won't even remember that they did it. And we're not going to have those people. Washington, D.C. is now a safe zone. It's a safe place, and you can walk, Katie, you can walk right down the street with, by the way, one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen, which is her husband. He was a football player for like 11 years in the NFL. He's a big person. But big doesn't mean anything when they have guns and when they have knives and everything else that they have, right? But you can walk right down the street, even by yourself, and you're totally safe. Washington, D.C. is a great thing. Yes, ma'am, please.
Mr. President, as you're calling on Democratic leaders across the country to work with you on crime, do you see your efforts here in D.C., including, for example, working with Mayor Bowser here as a model for bringing more bipartisanship in matters not only with crime, but also issues that matter to everyday American people's lives?
So Mayor Bowser's been great. She could have taken the thing, oh, well, and then after I clean it up, they'll take credit for it. You know what they do is they take credit. Like, we cleaned up Los Angeles. We did a great job there. And it was overwhelming what was going on. And again, the police chief made a statement that we could not have done, there's no way they could handle it. You saw what was happening out there. It was going to be a disaster. We stopped it cold. If we didn't do that, would have been a very sad day. And, you know, remember, we have the Olympics, we have the World Cup, we have all these things coming, and we have 250, all of these things coming. But I watched Newsom get up and say he's doing a great, he's not, we're the ones that did it, and that's okay, whatever it takes. But the main thing is, but he got up and said, we did it. Well, he didn't want us there, and he's going to need us again because it's starting to form again. I see it. It's starting to form again. You know, we have to maintain. It's like maintenance on an airplane. You can buy it, but you have to maintain it. And if you don't maintain it, a good plane becomes very unsafe very quickly. So it's an honor to do it. It's a lot of presidents wouldn't do what I'm doing. I don't need this heat. But when I watched television last night and I'm watching the news and I see that 9 people were killed in Chicago and 54 were badly wounded with bullets, I say, that's not this country. We have to do something. And I do say this, I say this very much. I'm not speaking to anybody but them right now. I would love to receive calls from governors and mayors saying they need help. We'll help them. We have a lot of people. We have a great force. We have a great military force. You know, Pete will tell you that when I was running for office, and this was a big headline, I think, you know, probably got me a couple of votes, but you couldn't sign people in the military. Nobody wanted to join the military, the Army, Air Force, the Navy, Marines, Space Force, Coast Guard. We never forget Coast Guard because they've done such a great job. Never. But nobody wanted to join any of them. We were way below what we wanted. Every single one. The closest was the Marines, whatever that is. You'll explain that to me. But the closest was the Marines. But every service was way down, way down. And then I got elected, and our country's the hottest country anywhere in the world right now. Everybody's talking about the USA. They're talking about the job that we're doing. Everybody. We have the best economy. We have a very, very important decision being made by the Supreme Court because our country is the richest, the strongest, the most powerful. But if for some reason some liberal court, I'm talking about the court that just ruled, where even an Obama judge voted in favor of us, which I gave him a compliment yesterday, as you know. I said that took great courage. But it's a liberal court, and it's going up to the Supreme Court, who I think have been incredible people. I think they've made very wise decisions. But the tariff question, because without the tariffs, this country is in serious, serious trouble. We've taken in almost $17 trillion of investment is coming in. Most of it is coming because of tariffs. And if for some reason somebody wanted to be politically correct, I actually think it's unpolitically correct. I think politically correct is to approve it because there's nothing so popular as what's happened to our country. Our country is doing so well. But we had a liberal court gave us a very shocking ruling, and that ruling is basically saying that the trillions of dollars that are pouring into our country, putting us in a position like no country is anywhere in the world, that they'd like to see us that taken away. By the way, a lot of the people behind that lawsuit, that particular, are from foreign countries, I might add.
There's a video that is circulating online now of the White House where a window is open to the residents upstairs and somebody is throwing a big bag out the window. Have you seen this?
No, that's probably AI generated.
So
Actually, you can't open the windows. You know why? They're all heavily armored and bulletproof.
So that's a fake video?
Well, it's got to be, because I know every window up there. The last place I'd be doing it is that, because there's cameras all over the place, right? Including yours. No, but every window, I've never seen a window that's, in fact, my wife was complaining about it the other day. She said, love to have a little fresh air come in, but you can't. They're bulletproof. And number one, they're sealed. And number two, each window weighs about 600 pounds. You have to be pretty strong to open them up. No, that has to be, where was the window? Let me see.
Maybe from the renovations?
Which is the window?
It looks like this is on the 15th Street side, I think.
Yeah.
So right here.
Yeah, those windows are sealed. Those windows they're all sealed. You can't open them.
What you were saying regarding the federal.
It's the kind of thing they do. And one of the problems we have with AI, it's both good and bad. If something happens really bad, just blame AI. But also they create things, you know, it works both ways. If something happens that's really bad, maybe I'll have to just blame AI. But there's truth to it, because I see so many phony things. I saw something as I was growing up, from the time I was a baby till now. I said, who did that? It was AI generated. So it's a little bit scary, to be honest with you. But those windows are all very heavily sealed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to follow up with what you were saying regarding that federal appellate court that ruled against you and your administration as it relates to your ability.
Well, they ruled against our country, the court, and they ruled against us before. It's a very liberal court.
You called it highly partisan in your
Well, it
social
certainly
media
is. It certainly
and in
is.
fact, it was along ideological lines, 7-4.
Well, except that we actually got one of the Obama judges that was appointed by President Obama voted in favor of the tariffs, because he felt it was imperative for our country to thrive and survive even. And I gave him credit. I said, you know what? That took a lot of courage for him to do it, because you don't see that often.
So my question is, I suspect you're going to appeal that all the way to the Supreme Court.
Well, we already have, yeah. In fact, we're doing something else. We're going to be going to the Supreme Court, we think, tomorrow, because we need an early decision. I mean, look, the financial fabric of our country, we're a rich, incredible country right now. And we're able to, you know, other countries use tariffs on us for years, and we never did. I did a lot during my first term, but then we had COVID and we had to focus on other things. You couldn't be tariffing Italy, Spain, France, as they were dying by the thousands and millions. But we did with China, and China paid us billions and billions of dollars. And I started the process, but then I had to end it a little bit because of COVID. We focused on that. But no, it's a very important decision, and frankly, if they make the wrong decision, it would be a devastation for our country. We've taken in trillions of dollars, and by the way, all these countries signed agreements. As an example, they're all happy, everybody's happy, but some whack job put in a lawsuit. It went before a very liberal court, and the liberal court ruled, it was 11, they ruled 7-4. With one of the most liberal of them all voting in our favor, because they're patriots. I think I give tremendous credit to that judge. And now it's going to the Supreme Court. Now we're going to be asking for early admittance. We're going tomorrow, and we're going to ask for an expedited ruling, because you know, when you look at the stock market's down today, the stock market's down because of that, because the stock market needs the tariffs. They want the tariffs. If you look at AI, all of those, you know, all of that money that's going to be invested, trillions and trillions of dollars, the biggest thing, bigger than the internet, I suspect. It's the internet plus 3 or 4 other things combined. We are leading very substantially with AI. We're leading because of tariffs. We're leading because of talent, and this is where they'd like to be. But without the tariffs, we wouldn't have a chance, because we wouldn't be able to protect those investments of the companies coming in. So if you took away tariffs, we could end up being a third world country. That's how big the ruling. So we're asking for an expedited ruling.
As a backstop to that, President, you have a Republican-controlled Congress. You control the House. You control the Senate.
Yeah, but we don't have 60 votes. We don't have 60 votes. I'd love to do that. Oh, if we had 60 senators, if we got the 60 votes, we would get them. But we need 60 votes, and we need, a certain number in the House. I think we'd get, I don't know, we have about 5 of them here. Would everybody agree with me on tariffs? Without tariffs, we're a different country. We have taken in so much money. And here's the thing. We signed a deal with Japan. They're paying us hundreds of billions of dollars. We signed a deal with South Korea. We signed a deal with the European Union. We signed a deal with Europe. And those countries are paying us $950 billion. And they're happy about it. They're okay. As one of them said, it's amazing that we got away with it so long. One of my friends, a leader of one of the countries, and they're fine with it. They all signed. If that ruling ever went against us, I guess we'd have to give back hundreds of billions. We would have to give trillions and trillions of dollars back to countries that have been ripping us off for the last 35 years. And I can't imagine it happening. On a legal basis, they have no legal basis whatsoever. But on a common sense basis, it would destroy America. Okay.
We talked about controlling the sky. On Sunday, the satellite signal of Ursula von der Leyen's plane was alleged.
With Ursula? Well, she had an interesting event. She's a tremendous woman. And so what are you asking me about her?
NATO is concerned about it. I do too, about this.
True, NATO is concerned about it. Well, nobody knows where it came from, but they did take away her ability to use a phone. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that could happen to me. I'd be very happy.
Mr. President, reducing the tariffs on India from 50%.
What does that mean?
Are you considering taking away some of the tariffs that you've imposed on India?
No, we get along with India very well. But India has, you have to understand, for many years it was a one-sided relationship. Only now, since I came along, and because of the power that we have with tariffs, India was charging us tremendous tariffs, about the highest in the world. They were about the highest in the world, number one. And we, therefore, weren't doing much business with India, but they were doing business with us because we weren't charging them. Foolishly, we weren't charging them. So they would send in massive, everything they made, they'd send it in, pour it into our country. Therefore, it wouldn't be made here, which is a negative. But we would not send in anything because they were charging us 100% tariffs. And, I'll give you an example, Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson couldn't sell into India. There was a 200% tariff on a motorcycle. So what happens? Harley Davidson went to India and built a motorcycle plant. And now they don't have to pay tariffs. Same thing as us. So what we're doing is literally thousands of companies are coming into the U.S., car companies, AI, but, more traditionally, car companies. We have so many car company factories under construction or being designed right now. And they're coming from China, they're coming from Mexico, I must tell you, and they're coming from Canada, a lot of them coming from Canada. But they're coming into our country because they want to build here. And they want to build here for two reasons. Number one, they'd like to be here. And number two, the tariffs are protecting them. And number three, they want to avoid paying tariffs. When they build their cars here, they don't have any tariffs to pay. When you build here, you don't have any tariffs.
Mr. President,
go ahead,
in light of the Minnesota shooting last week, the Department of Homeland Security is now awarding more than $100 million to hundreds of faith organizations across the country to help them ramp up security. What's your vision for further protecting religious liberty across the country amid incidents of threats?
So religious liberty is so important, and we're talking about every religion now, and we're doing things on that nobody else has ever done, and we're going to be having a big announcement in about 2 weeks on that question. Yeah, please.
On Space Command, sir, are you concerned that people may not be willing to relocate from Colorado to Alabama?
No, I'm not worried. We'll get somebody else. The problem with Colorado is they have a very corrupt voting system. Look, I have so many friends in Colorado. Anytime you have mail-in voting, you have corrupt elections. Very simple. It's very simple. Even Jimmy Carter said it with his commission. They set up a commission with him and Scoop Jackson and some people, highly regarded people. And they said the one thing, the finding was, if you have mail-in voting, you will have corrupt elections. Well, your radical left governor decided that he was going to have all mail-in voting in Colorado. Once you have all mail-in voting, and for whatever reason, the Democrats cheat. And they cheat like, you know, they're not stupid. That's the only thing. They're no good on policy. They're no good on management. They're no good at government. But they're great at cheating. And they stick together, too. I give them credit for sticking together. Please.
Obviously, this is a big win for national security, moving this to Alabama. We've all can agree with that.
Big.
Is there any idea of the economic impact this has on the state and on that local area?
Katie, do you want to answer that?
Look, I mean, go ahead.
Please go.
This is going to be tremendous. I mean, the state of Alabama, what we've seen through this process is the worst of Washington. We've seen politics get in the way of what is best for the warfighter, what's best for national security. And the state of Alabama is about to show the country the best among us. So we know the economic impact is going to be tremendous. There at Redstone Arsenal, we're proud to house everything from the FBI to headquarters there for material command to a number of things. We obviously have NASA with Marshall Space Flight Center, and so this naturally fits within. When you look at the decision matrix that they placed in front of us, that's why we ranked so high, is because we have the resources necessary and the ability to build out quickly to meet the needs in front of us. As far as economic impact, it would be tremendous. Does anybody have an exact number? 1,600 jobs.
3,000 spin-off.
With 3,000 spin-off. Look at this. This is teamwork right here. So we are really proud, and the people of Alabama are ready to get to work.
And I've got a housing question, if you could, just for a second, Mr.
Yeah,
President.
please.
Owning a home and going about the American dream seems like it's out of touch for a lot of Americans. Just recently, you pushed out a statement about addressing an emergency housing situation.
That's right. We're thinking about doing that.
Yeah, can you just...
Well, we need a little help from the Fed. We have a man named Jerome Too Late Powell. You probably heard of him. He's too late. He's way too late. And the economy is so strong that it's pushing through that. Normally, it would have been much tougher, but we're doing so well that we're pushing through it. But it makes it very hard for people to get mortgages because too late is too late. Very simple. He's too late. And probably political, whatever. He wasn't too late before the election. Before the election, he was cutting rates, right? Because he was hoping that, I guess, Biden would get in or that Kamala would. He was a big Biden guy. Explain that one. And then he was a Kamala person. But he was hoping, I guess, she'd win, I guess. I don't know. It didn't work out too well. But, yeah, we need a very serious cut. You know, I think that if you look back many decades ago, the United States was always the lowest, even if they were doing badly. The United States was, because without the United States, everything in the world would die. It's true. It's so powerful. It's so big. And I made it really big in the first 4 years. Then it started to degenerate with what this Biden administration did. But we built it up to a level that I never thought we could be at this quickly. We're the hottest, we're the best financially. The money coming in is so big because of tariffs and other things, but because of tariffs. Tariff gets us even those other things. Plus, it gets us great negotiating. I settled 7 wars, and numerous of those wars were because of trade. And numerous of the trade deals that I made were because of tariffs. It gives you a great negotiating ability. If that ability were taken away from us by a liberal court acting on essentially foreign nations, asking to get help from the United States government, when they've been doing this to us for 40 years, that's why we have $38 trillion in debt. We won't have it for long if they let us, if they allow us to do what everybody knows we should be able to do.